Hi guys, my name is Elisa and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we will discuss a comprehensive guide to writing the methodology section of your dissertation or your thesis paper. So the methodology section is really very important because in it, you will outline how you conducted your research and it will ensure that your study can be replicated and validated. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and make sure you like this video. Okay, let's talk about the steps and best practices for crafting a clear and thorough methodology chapter. So before we get into the steps, I want to explain the purpose of the methodology, right? So what is the methodology for, right? Why do you need to even write the methodology section? Well, in this section, you will explain the procedures and the techniques that you use to collect and analyze your data. So it will provide a clear framework that will help your readers understand the validity and the reliability of your research study. Okay, so now on to step one. So step one, this is where you will start with an overview, right? So you want to start your chapter with an overview. You will begin by briefly restating your research questions or your hypotheses, and this will provide context and it will remind the reader of the focus of your study as well. Next, you want to explain the research design. So here you will just provide an overview of the design, right? You will specify whether it was a qualitative study, a quantitative study, or a mixed methods study. You will discuss why this design is appropriate for answering your specific research questions. Step two is where you will describe the research setting as well as your study participants. So for the research setting, you want to describe the setting in which the research was conducted, of course, and this could be a physical location, an online environment. So for example, if you were able to get study participants from ResearchGate, you would indicate that. Or if, say, for example, you got your participants from private Facebook groups, right? You would indicate that as well, or any other relevant context. You will include details about why this setting was chosen and how it is relevant to your specific research questions. And for your study participants, you want to detail the characteristics of your participants, right? So this include like demographic information. So it could be their age range, it could be their sex or gender, it could include race, but it really will will determine the demographic information that you will report, especially in the results section, but also in the methodology section. You will really talk about what's the demographics, right, of the participants that you will be conducting your study on, right? So so from the age range to the sex or gender, as I said, it could be the race, right? It could be just anything else, even religion, right? But again, it will based on your research questions and the information that you're trying to garner from your study participants. You also want to indicate how your study participants were selected, right? And then the criteria for their inclusion and exclusion. So what were the inclusion criteria? What were the exclusion criteria? And then you want to explain the sampling method that you used. So whether it was random sampling, purposive sampling, or another convenient sampling, or another technique that you used. The third step is where you want to detail your data collection methods. So of course, there are 3 different data collection methods that you will use in most cases for your research study, right? So unless it's like a scoping review or systematic review or something like that, you'll just focus really on either quantitative data collection, a qualitative data collection, or if it's a mixed method study, then it will be a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data collection methods. So for your quantitative data, if it's a quantitative study, if you conducted this research, then you will describe the instruments that you use to collect your data. So whether you used certain tests or whether it were surveys or questionnaires that you gave out for participants to answer. You will provide information about the validity and reliability of the instrument that you used, right? So for example, if you created your own instrument, then you would more than likely, you would have needed to go through the Delphi technique, right? So you'd have to use the Delphi technique to make sure that your questions were valid, that they made sense for you to ask your study participants based on the data that you want to get from them, right? So based on your research questions, the purpose of your study, and the information that you're trying to get from study participants. And then, so you'll either use the Delphi technique if it's a brand new set of research questions that you yourself, survey questions that you yourself created, and or otherwise you want to make sure if it's already a standardized instrument, you want to make sure that it is valid and reliable for you to use to collect your data. Then you should explain how the data was collected, right, including any relevant procedures that you used. So of course you want to mention as well informed consent here. So for the qualitative data collection or research, you want to discuss the methods that you use, right? So whether you use interviews, focus groups, observations, or content analysis. So then explain how these methods were implemented, including the type of questions you asked and the process for recording and transcribing the responses from your study participants. For mixed method study, right, if you did this approach, then you will explain how you integrated both the qualitative and the quantitative methods. You want to describe how the data was collected and analyzed in each phase of the study. So step 4, this is where you will explain your data analysis procedures. So for quantitative data analysis, you will describe the statistical techniques and software that you use to analyze your quantitative data. Example, you may use SPSS, R, or Excel. Then, and there are quite a number of other data collection ways you can use to analyze your data as well, right? But these 3 are some of the most common ones that are used to analyze data. Then you'll want, or a combination of them, right? So in most cases, like for me, I use SPSS when I was doing both my thesis and my dissertation studies. And I use a combination of Excel. So I put my information in Excel first, and then I move them over to SPSS for analysis. So then you can also explain the specific tests that you conducted, right? So example, if you did an ANOVA or a t-test or regression analysis, right? Or logistic regression, whatever the case may be. And then you will explain why you use those specific tests. So then for the qualitative data analysis, you want to outline the process that you use to analyze your qualitative data. So this may include coding procedures, thematic analysis, narrative analysis, or grounded theory, right? And then you want to talk about like inductive reasoning, if that was the case, or deductive reasoning, right? And then you can explain how you identified and interpreted patterns and themes in your data. And then for the mixed methods analysis, if applicable, you want to describe how you integrated and analyzed the data from both the qualitative and the qualitative sources. And then you want to discuss any software or techniques that you use to synthesize your findings. So step 5, this is where you will address the ethical considerations. So for the informed consent, you want to explain how you obtained informed consent from your study participants, and you'll include details about how participants were informed about the study's purpose, procedures, risks, and benefits. And then for confidentiality and anonymity, you want to describe the measures that you took to ensure the confidentiality and anonymity of participants, right? So that all their data remained confidential and that they remained anonymous to anyone who was like reading your article or something when you publish your great article, right? After you complete your study. And then you want to explain how data was stored and protected as well. And now for ethical approval, you want to mention any ethical approvals that you obtained, right? So from institutional review boards, IRBs, or ethics committees, right? So you should provide information about the approval process and then any relevant protocols that you followed. And now on to step 6. So this is where you will discuss your limitations and delimitations, right? So for your limitations, you want to acknowledge any limitations in your methodology that could impact the validity and or the reliability of your study findings. So this might include like the sample size, the response rate, or potential biases. Okay, so for example, it may be a small sample size, which may not necessarily be representative of the population, right? And so you really want to ensure that you address all of those and acknowledge them in your methodology chapter. So for delimitations, before I go into it, right? So these define the boundaries of your study, right? So these are boundaries that researchers set in their research studies to decide what to include and exclude. And this helps to narrow down the study and make it more relevant to the overall research goal. So delimitations can include the population, the location, or methodology of the study, and then they identify what will not be covered in the study and why the choice was made to not cover those specific areas. So for delimitations, you will explain the specific choices that you made to narrow the scope of your study, such as focusing on a particular population or geographic area, just to make your study as specific as possible. Okay, and of course, as I mentioned in the previous video, this of course will eliminate overwhelm, right? So you won't be too overwhelmed if your study is as specific as possible instead of it being too broad, too general, right? You want to make sure that your topic is specific. Okay. So I have some final tips here for you. The first is that you need to be clear and detailed. So you should ensure that your methodology section is clear, that it's detailed, and that it is logically structured. So this will allow other researchers to replicate your study if they need to do so, or if they desire to do so. So you also want to use subheadings. So use subheadings to organize the methodology section, and this improves readability and helps readers easily navigate through the different parts. And then you want to cite relevant sources. So support your methodological choices with citations from relevant literature, okay? So of course, we're talking again about the lit review. So this will provide a theoretical foundation and it will demonstrate the rigor of your specific methodological approach. Then you want to review and revise your work. So thoroughly review and revise your methodology section, right? Seek feedback from your academic advisors, from your committee members, and from your peers to ensure that your methodology chapter is clear and that it is comprehensive. All right, so now we want to talk about this. Let's go over a summary of the different steps. So you want to start with an overview. Then you should describe the research setting and the study participants. You should detail your data collection methods. You should explain your data analysis procedures. Then you want to address the ethical considerations that are related to your study. You want to discuss limitations and delimitations. You also want to be clear and detailed. You should use the subheadings, cite relevant sources, and review and revise your work as necessary. And please make sure you get feedback from your peers, from your academic advisors, and from your committee members. By following these detailed steps, you'll be well equipped to write a comprehensive and transparent methodology section for your dissertation or thesis paper. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss any new videos that I upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Bye, guys. See you soon.